Hi, this is Arun Bhaskar from Bhaskar Ki Business Batein from BKBB actually, which is news behind the news. That's part of Bhaskar Ki Business Batein, which is on policy analysis, conversations, and occasional business stories. Today, we would like to talk about the year in perspective because the year is over. For those who celebrated Christmas, Merry Christmas. And what we want to look at is perhaps the most important thing that people have been exercised about, and that is the marketplace. So let's begin with the markets. But before that, let me introduce my co anchors to you. We have Katya here. Welcome, Katya. We have Saloni, and we have Janvi. Welcome, Saloni and Janvi. We are going to discuss the following titles. The first, as I said, we're going to look at a market perspective. And then after that, we're going to talk about India's GDP. We're going to talk about India's New Zealand FTA. And lastly, we're going to talk about how Indian Pharma is very, very fallible. Let's begin with the market perspective because what the markets are very important. One thing. Do watch our latest podcast. It is on the Indigo story. Let's go. Okay, market perspective. Katya, come in. You are the market expert. You're the market guru. And these are the things we're looking at. We're looking at the markets. How many stocks have fallen and yet the market is buoyant. Can we begin with that?
So Nifty 50, in the middle of this year, there were a lot of articles written about how Nifty 50 has not, given any returns for a lot of people. And then that is one part of the story. And second part of the story is market has been volatile. It's going up and down. And even a small indication of any deal between India and the US, etc., is actually putting a lot of, giving it a lot of upward momentum. It shows that there is a lot of dry powder in the market. And there are a certain number of stocks. And then the IPOs are also getting decent traction, mostly from institutional money. Itself shows that, stock market right now is not raising, it's floating. So at any point of time, and like the Business Standard article says, 60% of top 1,000 stocks are trading in the red. So even if there is any growth, there is a lot of upward growth. And then a lot of these new age companies have started to do well because they have their own set of investors. So a lot of things are going, it's actually moving along. It's moving along on the momentum it has got from the last year and the year before last bull run. But from now, for the coming year, it's going to be a real test. We have seen talks of growth. We have seen green shoots of growth for last 1 year, 1.5 years, and green shoots of hope. Now the hope, the growth, and the activity has to translate because a lot of order book companies were getting private PE multiples on order books which were expected to be FY25 size. So if you based on FY25 order books, they were getting PE multiples in 2022, 23. So now coming year, it has to translate into growth, profits, as well as sales equally. Without that, it's going to be a very, very tough year. Back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. In fact, that leads automatically to a next story. But before that, Katya, what's worrying me, what is worrying for me and for many other people is there's so much of money coming into the market. And the government's deal with Russia that can put the rupees that it's earned into the markets means that much more money coming in, billions of dollars. Now, when there's so much of money chasing existing stocks, you're going to have an appearance of market buoyancy, which is more money chasing few scripts.
Even the AI bubble, sir.
Yes, it's an AI bubble.
So AI bubble bursting, the money is coming in. Other countries are not coming. So a lot of stock market growth is by default because something else is not working. Let's put it here. There is no inherent growth story.
Which is why I like your analysis. The market is floating.
Right.
And as more money comes in and the AI bubble bursts, the market will continue to float because there's too much of money cushioning it.
Right. There's a lot of dry powder in the market.
Dry powder. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Katya. And that takes me to the next story, which is about India's GDP. If the markets have been up, though not really up because many stocks are doing badly, there is a lot of speculation that India's GDP is not 8% as is being claimed. The IMF flagged India's GDP and India's foreign exchange calculations and reserves. And some economists believe that India's GDP growth is just about 3%, and the rest is hyped up with a lot of statistical uh, interpretations, revaluations. Whether that can be sustained, I do not know. But yes, what's the GDP front? You can't have a high GDP and poverty. You can't have a government saying we're feeding 60 crore people if the country is wealthy. There are contradictions everywhere. And that is why India's GDP is also being questioned right now. Let's take the third story, which is equally interesting, and that is by Saloni on the India-New Zealand FTA.
Yes, sir. So the India and New Zealand have finalized a major free trade agreement FTA after 9 months of negotiation. New Zealand will give zero duty access to 100% of India's exports, and in return, India will gradually reduce duties on New Zealand imports from 13.8% to 10.3% in 5 years, and further to 9.06% by the 10th year. It is important to note that India's simple average tariff on a most favored nation basis currently stands at 16.2%. India has offered market access of 70.03% of tariff lines, which covers 95% of New Zealand's export by value. New Zealand have also committed $20 billion in foreign direct investment over the next 15 years. As much as 30% of tariff lines are on the exclusion list. These include dairy products such as milk, cream, whey, yogurt, cheese, animal products other than sheep meat, vegetables including onions, chana, peas, and corn, as well as almonds, sugar, artificial honey, and other items. Indian industries that benefit the most are textiles and apparel, leather and headgear, ceramics, carpets, automobiles and auto components, pharmaceuticals, machinery, petroleum products. On the other hand, on the import side, India will import wood, aluminium scrap, coal, and turbojets. Also, apples, kiwi fruits, and manuka honey will also be imported, but under the tariff rate quotas because they have to balance farmers' interests, Indian farmers' interests. So, according to the Commerce Department, New Zealand will remove numerical caps on Indian students. It will guarantee at least 20 hours of work per week during study and will extend post study work opportunities of up to 3 years for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics graduates, and 4 years of doctoral degree holders. A new temporary employment entry visa pathway will allow up to 5,000 Indian professionals at any given time to work in New Zealand for up to 3 years. New Zealand will also issue multiple entry working holiday visas to 1,000 young Indians each year, valid for 12 months. Market access commitments have been made across 118 services sectors. The FTA is expected to be signed in 2 to 3 months after legal scrubbing, and it will come into force within 6 to 7 months. But New Zealand will need a parliamentary approval for this. So, what's your take on this, sir?
Thank you, Saloni. It is the most hyped up story in Indian media. And in the noise and bustle that has been created, people forget that New Zealand's main interest in India is its dairy sector. India's dairy is the largest in the world. And New Zealand finds that very, very uh, problematic because it cannot export its surplus stocks to India. It's tried coming into India several times in the past, which our latest podcast will tell you more about. But what is interesting are the two pictures on your screen. The government release in India says that agriculture will be protected, and so will the dairy industry. But look at the highlighted area in the New Zealand government's statement. It says that milk, instant milk powder, especially for babies and for whiteners, are products that will be imported into India. It may look very innocuous, but that product, that sector, is aimed directly at Amul spray, one of the biggest profit centers for Amul. If your profit centers go, then the entire brand goes. And that is why we think that all this hype conceals one item which can destroy India's agriculture. Let's see what happens. And that takes me to the last story for today, and that is about Fallible Pharma. Janvi, could you come in?
Yes, sir. So we have a sort of a transition that is underway in India's pharmaceutical sector, and it could change things for thousands of small drug manufacturers. So according to a new report, just 1 in 4 MSME pharma units in India are likely to be ready for the transition to the revised Good Manufacturing Practices or GMP norms by the December 31 deadline. So these revised standards, notified back in 2022, significantly tighten quality controls from risk management and equipment validation to product recalls. So to put it simply, they've raised the bar, but most small manufacturers are struggling to reach that level. So, out of an estimated 6,500 MSME pharmaceutical units that needed to upgrade, only about 1,700 have submitted their plans to comply. The rest could possibly be facing shutdowns once inspections begin next year. And the financial hurdle is a major factor here because upgradation costs range from 50 lakh rupees to 2.4 rupees per 2.5 crore per unit, which is a massive investment for micro and small firms operating on thin margins. While the government has offered extensions until the end of December for units with turnover below 250 crores, these extensions are conditional on filing detailed gap analysis, something that many firms have failed to do. Now, this crackdown, of course, follows serious safety concerns, including all the contamination linked deaths that we've seen in the recent years. And regulators argue that there will be no compromise on quality anymore, even if it means short term disruption. So in the near term, India is unlikely to see major drug shortages because large manufacturers and contract manufacturing arrangements can absorb some of the shock, but but then it does signal a consolidation of the pharma industry where small players either upgrade or they merge or they exit. So there's definitely the question of whether India can achieve world-class quality standards without sacrificing its MSME base. But we what we might be looking at here is fewer manufacturers but higher global credibility for Indian drugs. So what do you say about that, sir?
I'm glad you did the story because the pharma sector is an export oriented industry as well, besides the domestic consumption story. It is an industry where India has done very well in a place, the industry is one where China also cannot match India's skills in pharmaceuticals. The trouble with India is that in a hurry to get there, it's allowed small enterprises to come in without proper manufacturing processes. And that has resulted in the cough syrup deaths in countries overseas as well as in India. And the danger is that India might be labeled as a contaminated drug exporter. That is the reason why India is firm that GMP norms have to be implemented so that this does not continue. And that, in a way, thanks, Janvi, and that, in a way, finishes our story for today. Please click the subscribe button, the like button, and tell all your friends about us. That is important because we are growing, we want to grow faster. And lastly, don't forget to listen to the podcast. We can take a couple of questions, and let me take one question that has come up here. Will India's GDP remain buoyant? Well, it depends which numbers you believe in. Many economists have started questioning the GDP calculations themselves. And they say that GDP should not be more than 3%. The unemployment rates, the absence of new jobs being created, the poor investments taking place, except, and here I must clarify, the last year has seen major investments from the likes of Google and Amazon and others coming in. But job creation remains a problem. If we don't create jobs, you will have problems. And if you don't address agricultural issues, you will have a problem. It will reduce the consumption market. The New Zealand deal might hurt agriculture. And that is why your GDP will again be under stress. Your purchasing power will again be under stress. And that takes me to one last question. And the question that's come up is, will pharmaceuticals be able to cope with the new GMP? As Janvi said, the larger pharmaceutical companies have already met the GMP norms. It's the smaller ones that will go out of that will be out of the market. That also means two things: more units shutting down, more unemployment, unless we can revise our investment rules. We're talking about trade rules. Trade is not what we need. We need investments as FDI for manufacturing, for creating new jobs. Fortunately, the government has decided to focus on labor-intensive industries and not capital-intensive industry, as it has been doing for the last so many years. There's a good sign. But let it happen. At present, the government says many things and they don't happen. Let it happen, we'll be delighted. In the meantime, we end for today. Have a great time, have a great weekend, and have a great celebration for the new year. Enjoy yourself. All the best.